The Anti-Money Laundering Act of 2020, or the AML Act, is a landmark legislation that aims to modernize and strengthen the U.S. anti-money laundering and counterterrorism financing regime. The AML Act was enacted as part of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2021 on January 1, 2021. It is the most comprehensive reform of the Bank Secrecy Act, or the BSA, since the USA Patriot Act in 2001. The AML Act introduces several new requirements for financial institutions that are subject to the BSA. These include reporting beneficial ownership information of legal entities. The AML Act establishes a national registry of beneficial owners of corporations and limited liability companies that are created or registered in the U.S. or do business in the U.S. Financial institutions will be able to access this registry through the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, or FinCEN, to verify the identity of their customers and comply with customer due diligence rules. The AML Act also provides incentives and protections for financial institutions that voluntarily report suspicious transactions involving shell companies. Establishing national AML/CFT priorities. The AML Act requires FinCEN, in consultation with other relevant agencies and stakeholders, to issue biennial statements of national priorities for combating money laundering and terrorism financing. Financial institutions will have to incorporate these priorities into their risk-based AML/CFT programs and update them accordingly. Enhancing information sharing and cooperation. The AML Act encourages greater information sharing and cooperation among financial institutions, regulators, law enforcement, and national security agencies. It authorizes FinCEN to establish a pilot program for sharing suspicious activity reports, or SARs, among financial institutions within the same group or association. It also expands the scope of information that can be shared under Section 314(b) of the USA Patriot Act, which allows financial institutions to share information related to money laundering or terrorism financing with each other. Additionally, it requires FinCEN to establish a FinCEN exchange program to facilitate public-private partnerships and information sharing on emerging threats and trends. Expanding the scope and penalties of AML/CFT violations. The AML Act broadens the definition of financial institutions under the BSA to include certain private investment funds, dealers in antiquities, and advisors and consultants who engage in transactions involving covered assets. It also increases the civil and criminal penalties for violating the BSA or obstructing its enforcement. Moreover, it creates new whistleblower incentives and protections for individuals who report violations of the BSA to their employers or authorities. These are some of the key provisions of the AML Act that affect financial institutions. The AML Act also contains other measures to improve the effectiveness and efficiency of the U.S. AML/CFT system, such as establishing a subcommittee on innovation and technology within the BSAG, requiring periodic reviews and updates of BSA regulations and guidance, creating a no-action letter process for FinCEN, and mandating various studies and reports on various topics related to money laundering and terrorism financing. The AML Act represents a significant overhaul of the U.S. AML/CFT framework that aims to address the evolving challenges and opportunities posed by new technologies, global trends, and emerging threats. Financial institutions should closely monitor the implementation of the AML Act by FinCEN and other regulators and prepare for the changes that will impact their compliance obligations and operations. The AML Act is a landmark legislation that aims to modernize and strengthen the U.S. anti-money laundering and counterterrorist financing framework. It has significant implications for commerce and security, both domestically and internationally. First, the AML Act could improve transparency and accountability in the financial system by requiring the creation of a beneficial ownership registry, enhancing information sharing and cooperation among financial institutions and regulators, and expanding the scope and coverage of anti-money laundering rules and standards. Second, the AML Act could reduce compliance costs and burdens for financial institutions by streamlining reporting requirements, providing feedback and guidance on suspicious activity reports, and incentivizing innovation and technology adoption in compliance programs. Third, the AML Act could increase innovation and competitiveness in the financial sector by fostering a more level playing field among different types of financial service providers, encouraging the development and use of new products and services that meet customer needs and preferences, and facilitating cross-border transactions and cooperation. Fourth, the AML Act could deter and detect money laundering, terrorist financing, and other financial crimes by enhancing the authorities and resources of law enforcement agencies, imposing tougher penalties and sanctions for violations, and addressing emerging threats and vulnerabilities in the financial system. The AML Act is a comprehensive and ambitious reform that could have far-reaching effects on commerce and security. It represents a major step forward in the fight against money laundering and its related harms.